It is estimated that about 6 in every 10 Kenyans have been affected in one form or another by gender-based violence, either directly or indirectly. But gender-based violence, as we know it, is perceived as a male perpetrator, female victim situation. But is that really always the case?
Warm up. Nafanya warm up, sweetheart. My
mimi hata nilichelewa lakini till now mtu kwa nafaa kwenda kuona mtoto wangu.
Mimi nafaa kuwa na appointment saa ngapi?
Toa machozi, utoi machozi.
The United Nations Women Foundation estimates that about 35% of women globally have at one point or another experienced either physical or sexual violence. And the statistics are quite similar here in Kenya. The only problem is, among that worrying trend, there's a demographic of people who are suffering in silence, and that is the men. We meet this man, whom we'll call Thomas to protect his identity. He is a 36-year-old father of one and is happily married, but carries with him a sad past. Years ago, before he married, Thomas had undergone one of the many forms of gender-based violence, sexual assault. Thomas was raped alongside a young boy. The act, he tells us, was allegedly instigated by his employer during his early teens while hustling to earn a living in Molo town.
Kuna place ilikuwa choo za soko. Kwenda pale, yule jamaa ni asubuhi sasa, the following day asubuhi. Kwenda saa 11. Kwenda yule jamaa akatuambia tutoe suruali. Alikuwa na mafuta ya ng'ombe. Kuna mafuta ilikuwa box hivi ng'ombe. Tukalala. Baada ya kulala, he did it. Akatufanya kutoka nyuma. Kitu chenye kilikuwa kichungu sana. Na from that day, ikawa sasa ni kama mazoea.
Have you shared it with your wife?
No, I have not shared it with my wife. And yeah, I did not have that courage because you feel feminine. You feel reduced to the ground.
Thomas is one among many men who prefer not to openly talk about gender-based violence, especially sexual violence meted on them. Michael urges this group to speak out with the hopes that the circle of violence can reach a screeching halt.
There's a culture of silence in our society. Why? One, men have been socialized to learn that they can be violated and they do not talk. Remember those days when your mother beats you up, or your elder sister or whoever, or your aunt, and they'll tell you, vumilia kama mwanaume, we don't have to see your tears, you know. And if they see your tears, you are behaving like a woman.
Thomas is, however, lucky to be alive. For some male victims, the trauma from the abuse leads to a cycle of violence in their own lives. We head to the Langata Women's Prison, where we meet 49-year-old Jane Nambuye, who is currently on her 7th month of her sentence. She is in for killing her husband of over 20 years in a domestic incident that took place in Riruta Satellite here in Nairobi back in November 2015.
I had the long braids, so what he did, he came from behind. He pulled my braids, you know. Yeah, from behind. And I was like, what is happening? And that's when I said, I might be in for a big fight, you know?
So and then it became physical?
Yeah, so he grabbed me from behind and he kind of choked me. So I was gasping for air. So after gasping for air, what I did, and I'm saying this so that other women may know, because we have reached, you know, I will not hide anything. Although could be in court, I was like, I'm staying mom. I actually took the knife and it was a swipe. And that was the end of the story.
With himself inside. Jane, who was a teacher by profession, tells us that during the final days of her marriage to Francis, he had become abusive. Did he ever abuse you physically?
Of course, many times. Many times. Many times I was battered, and I think that's where I built the resilience. When you reach out a place and you say, enough is enough. Because when you're a battered woman, you do not have self-confidence, you know? You go to school, could be you have a black eye, you are standing in class, your pupils, what's wrong with the teacher and all that. It erodes your self-esteem. And for me to gather that self-esteem back, it was a long journey.
On the fateful day, he had physically assaulted her twice, and despite her efforts to convince the court that what she did was out of self-defense, Jane was still handed a life sentence. Do you have any regrets about that day?
What I would say is that, you know, I don't know what to say, but it wasn't worth my happiness. It was not worth my happiness.
The marriage?
I'm saying even that act, it was not worth my life to be wasted here. It was not worth my happiness. If I had been given the second chance, I think I would turn a blind eye to such provocative situations.
So as much as issues of gender-based violence are reported on the regular on mainstream media, and that more and more people are coming out to share their stories, the process of opening up is not always that easy. Right now, a special forum is taking place here at the Laiko Regency, something known as a safe room, where people come out to speak about issues of gender-based violence to those whom they feel will give them a listening ear. The nature of the safe rooms is that its greatest strength and effectiveness banks on the security and secrecy that victims of gender-based violence can talk to each other without facing stigma or victimization. As such, we are not allowed to film inside the room. This forum is organized by Wangu Kanja, an advocate against gender-based violence. She believes that such events give victims a voice in an otherwise traumatizing situation, and hopes that in the long run, the victims' voices will be loud enough for anyone willing to make a change against the vice.
When it comes to sexual and gender-based violence, you're actually destroying that person because you're taking away their dignity. You're taking away who they are. And if they don't know who they are, then how do we help them to actually start their healing process and self-discover who they are and take back their dignity so that they can live a fulfilled life?
And justice is what many families are seeking, even as the scope and viciousness of the attacks continue to break families and ruin futures. The Protection Against Domestic Violence Act of 2015 is vague on specific punishments for perpetrators of domestic violence, but heavily mentions the application of a restraining order. Article 8, subsection 1 of the Act states that a person who is in a domestic relationship with another person may apply to the court for a protection order in respect of that other person. The law does not highlight specific instances, but directs that a court may give compensation to victims of domestic violence as the court deems fit. Do you think the law has cracked the whip on perpetrators of gender-based violence?
So I would say from my own personal experience, we have a long way to go.
Wangu holds hundreds of such meetings every year and is hoping that the legislation on laws touching on gender-based violence will offer stiffer penalties to deter potential perpetrators. For the few who the system may have exposed, like Jane, the root cause of the crisis is not so much so the justice system as it is the eroding value system that was once attached to the institution of marriage.
My marriage was not a bed of roses. Of course, during those initial days, you know, when there is still what you call love, you know, Yeah. But as the days went by, it changes. And I always say that a man cannot only abuse a woman physically, even financially.
29-year-old Salome Kanini was laid to rest on the 16th of January 2018. She died after spending 4 nights at the Kenyatta National Hospital, battling serious burn injuries. Now, 6 weeks after the loss and subsequent burial of 29-year-old Salome Kanini, we came back to their home in Kiserian to find out how Salome's mother is coping with not only the loss of her daughter, but now the added responsibility of having to take care of her 2 grandchildren. Kesi inaendelea vipi kotini, kwa sababu kitendo hicho kilifanyika, jamaa alikamatwa, na mwisho tulipozungumza ndio kesi ilikuwa inaanza kidogo. So hebu tueleze, how has the case progressed so far?
Kesi wakati tulikuwa tunaenda hapa Ngong, ikatolewa Ngong, huyo mtu akapelekwa Kajiado, na tumeenda mission, inaitwa missioning for 2 times now. I think this was the second time.
Salome's husband is quoting insanity as his defense. He seeks to be incarcerated at the Mathare Mental Hospital. A mention to the case is scheduled for the first week of March. For the aging Jane Njeri, her greatest concern is the huge task of having to bring up her grandchildren who may never have the luxury of meeting their mother who has passed on, and their father who faces possible jail time. Her tears flow freely, just like when we first met her at the Kenyatta National Hospital 8 weeks ago. It is the pain and bitterness of a mother who knows too well the life of her child was cut short way too early.
Well, we promised you the Biza and we're delivering on it. This is about the story of a 28-year-old woman who is fighting for her life at the Murang'a District Hospital after her estranged husband bit her several times in the face and then beat her mercilessly.
A 21-year-old pregnant woman was brutally beaten by her husband. The police are investigating the circumstances under which a CID officer shot his wife several times before taking his own life.
A Nairobi businessman has been arrested by police in Buruburu for allegedly shooting his wife dead.
All because of a dangerous vice that rears its ugly head once so often, and one that she hopes will be nipped in the bud before another senseless killing takes place at the institution of marriage. Timothy Otieno, KTN News.